Which of the following statements do you think is true? A. Dogs eat feces in an effort to maintain a clean environment. Or B. Dogs eat feces because it smells like food. The answer might not be the one you're thinking of. Keep listening to Formosa Fauna to find out. Spend the next 20 minutes feeding your brain with Formosa Fauna so you can learn all about the animal kingdom and become smarter than all of your friends. I'm Tristan, the voice of Formosa Fauna. I love animals and I love talking about them. If you're even remotely curious about animals, you're in the right place. Every Friday is Formosa Fauna Friday. On today's agenda, we're going to talk about a pygmy hippo that will make its debut in Taiwan this Sunday, a brief animal rescue diaries update, all about abalone, why 16% of dogs eat feces, and the story of a woman who rescued over 100 horses from wildfires in Los Angeles. Let's dive right in. In the news this week in Taiwan, little Tabo, T-H-A-B-O, Thabo, a pygmy hippo, will be unveiled to the public at the Taipei Zoo this Sunday. The zoo is hoping that Tabo, the pygmy hippopotamus, will follow in the footsteps of Mudang, a pygmy hippo born at the Khao Keo Open Zoo in Thailand last year, as the animal became a global sensation. Thousands of people lined up to watch the baby animal, foreign business leaders donated, and the zoo was able to license souvenirs. Tabo made his journey from Singapore in November, which was off to a rocky start at first as he had to grow accustomed to his new environment, which was actually quite a bit colder than where he came from. After about a month, the male pygmy hippo gained a strong appetite and lost his fear of older pygmy hippo neighbors. Following his quarantine, Tabo was allowed outside, where he scavenged for food and played in the water, showing his caretakers that he was healthy and ready to face zoogoers. Beginning this Sunday, the public can visit Tabo in the African wildlife area of the Taipei Zoo. Visitors are asked to not knock on the glass, use flash photography, or try to touch or feed any of the animals in that area. Following up on previous episodes is this segment, Animal Rescue Diaries. As some of you may know, in my free time around my apartment in Taiwan, I assist with Cats TNR, which is Trap, Neuter, Return, where we trap cats, take them in to get spayed, neutered, and or vaccinated, and then return them to where we found them. It helps control populations of stray cats, keeping them healthier and assuring they won't reproduce, while also keeping shelters open to those animals who really need it. Recently, I had mentioned that I ran across a cat in dire need of help. I was so distraught over her condition in the last episode that I basically spent the entire time talking about what had happened. To those of you who are like me and are very afraid of unhappy endings, don't worry, this story has no ending yet. As I'm recording this episode, our strong kitty protagonist is alive and fighting her best fight. Last we spoke on the topic, she had been placed in an oxygen therapy chamber at the vet for 24/7 oxygen therapy due to her very bad pneumonia. I was updated with a video once every 1 to 2 days where I got to see her at mealtime looking more and more energized and brave, facing the camera head on, whereas she previously had to wait until people were not in the room at all before she'd even touch her food. She stopped wheezing as a symptom of her pneumonia and stopped drooling as a symptom of her high liver index, both of which are diseases or conditions that are being treated by the vet. What's new is this. The girl who was quarantining her mentioned that she had been in to visit the kitty, which is when I even realized, I guess, that it might even be a possibility for me to go visit. So I asked if I could go visit her, which is when I found out that she had been taken out of the vet's care because the clinic had to shut down for a week while the vet traveled overseas. That was very scary for me too, because she really was in bad shape before going into the 24/7 oxygen chamber therapy. I did go to visit her though, and she is wheezing now that she's not in the oxygen therapy chamber, but not drooling, and fortunately she's still eating decently well. She is still so skinny though, and we're not really sure where all the food is going because it's staying down, but she's not putting on essentially any weight. Being so skinny and probably lacking a good amount of oxygen due to the pneumonia, she doesn't have a whole lot of energy in her, and even when alarmed by scary visitors like myself, she just remains lying down most of the time. You know those little tubes that are full of liquid treats for cats? They call them chow in Taiwan, and I think in the United States they're called churra, something like that. The cats absolutely love these, right? I took one to her to eat, opened it up and let her smell it, kind of put some on her mouth, and she wouldn't eat it. That was a little sad. So I squeezed it out into her bowl and took a few steps away. Then after a little bit, she was eating it. So all in all, pretty good. She finished it. I admire this cat so much because I can see how bad of shape she's in. After 2 weeks of almost 24/7 veterinary care, almost 3 weeks now, I think, she is still in bad shape. So I know all of the diseases she's struggling with now, and yet before we intervened, somehow she was dealing with every single one of those by herself and still surviving. I don't know how she did it. I love and admire her. So let's keep hoping and praying for more forward progress. But I won't spend all this episode talking about her. Taiwan is an island that is 70% covered by mountains, lakes, and jungle. Taiwan's early connections to the Pacific and Southeast Asia are well established and are the basis for seeing Taiwan as an ocean nation. Did you know that over 17,000 species thrive in the deep sea where no light penetrates the ocean waves? Or that there are 38,000 different kinds of microbes in just a single liter of seawater? These were all discoveries made by the Census of Marine Life, a 10-year international effort that assessed the diversity, distribution, and abundance of marine life. Today, you're going to learn all about abalone. This is one kind of marine life you may have heard of before and possibly have eaten before. Abalone is widely eaten in Taiwan, although I've never eaten it because its sheer size makes it a little scary to me. I'm also from a place that naturally has no oceans and no ocean food. Seafood. I'm from Nebraska, which is the second farthest place from the ocean in the world. Abalone are flattened sea snails that are shaped like ears, and people have known about them and used them for a variety of purposes for a long, long time. In South Africa, archaeologists found 2 abalone shells that were used as paint pots. Get this, 100,000 years ago. Somebody used these abalone shells 100,000 years ago as part of a paint-making toolkit. They ground ochre with charcoal and seal bones, possibly heating the mixture and using the abalone shells with their holes plugged to store the red pigment. The finding in the Blombos cave provided more evidence that even at the early stage in evolution of Homo sapiens, people planned and produced things, finding the palm-sized abalone shells as useful containers. Today, the tradition has continued, and abalone is still being used in a variety of ways. Today, they're used for their lustrous, oily nacre, often in deep greens and blues, to make jewelry and inlays. In New Zealand Maori culture, they are recognized as treasures. Of course, people also have a long history of eating abalone because the meaty snails are easy to find along shorelines. Although being regarded as a delicacy, in many places the populations have declined due to over-collecting. In 2001, the white abalone was the first marine invertebrate to be added to the United States endangered species list after a decade of overfishing nearly wiped out the species. Despite conservation efforts, the species is still struggling because the remaining abalone are too widely dispersed to breed with one another. More efforts are being made to breed them in captivity than release them to the wild. Known as jokong, Taiwanese abalone is a special kind of abalone. Because it is rich in nutrition, Taiwanese abalone has long been regarded as the best health supplement remedy. Currently, there are 2 methods to aquafarm Taiwanese abalone: coastal aquaculture and intensive farming. For coastal aquaculture, they are semi-widely cultured and fed by fishermen. For intensive farming, they are raised with feeds in multi-layered cages that are placed inside rearing ponds constructed on land. Perhaps the grossest of any potential behavioral issues when it comes to dogs is poop eating. There are actually a number of reasons why dogs might eat poop, and some experts say it could be a learned behavior from their mothers, who sometimes eat their offspring's stool to keep the den clean. I'm referring to Zach George's Guide to a Well-Behaved Dog for this segment of the episode because he's a real dog trainer. He is a professional. A study in veterinary medicine and science surveyed over 3,000 people with dogs and discovered that about 16% of their dogs ate feces often. 80% of those preferred poop that was fresh, less than 2 days old. The study's authors hypothesized that the reasons stem back to the dog's wolf ancestors. Wolves would defecate away from their dens to protect against intestinal parasite eggs in their feces. However, if a sick or injured wolf did defecate near the den, they would eat the feces right away since parasite eggs don't usually hatch into infectious larvae for a few days. So the wolves would essentially eat the poop to keep their den free of dangerous parasites. The idea is that dogs who eat poop nowadays also do so as a natural instinct to keep them and their family or their pack safe. Central Taiwan was recently hit hard by a 6.4 magnitude earthquake with its epicenter 38 kilometers southeast of the Chiayi County Government Building at a depth of only 10 kilometers. The area surrounding the epicenter had shaken continuously since the initial tremor, with aftershocks concentrated around the Nanhua and Nanxi districts in Tainan City. Several important roadways collapsed, trapping around 50 residents. Although many suffered minor injuries, including scrapes and bruises, thankfully nobody has been seriously injured due to the earthquake so far. However, several homes have been severely damaged, with walls developing large cracks and some starting to crumble away. It does make pet owners nervous, wondering what they can do to protect their pets should a strong earthquake strike. The possibility of the big one or a big one is always at the back of many pet owners' minds. And unlike tornadoes, hurricanes, and other natural disasters, earthquakes strike without any warning, making them even scarier and harder to prepare for. According to the Mickelson Found Animals organization, there are a few actions you can take to try to protect furry family members in the incident of an earthquake. If you're outside when an earthquake strikes, drop to the ground before the shaking knocks you down and crawl to an open area away from trees, power lines, and buildings. When the shaking is significant, dogs may try to run away and escape to safety. Hold on to the leash as best as you can and cover your head and neck with your hands and arms, holding on to something if possible. Apparently, animals are pretty good at finding safety and hiding until danger has passed, so if your dog gets loose, wait until the shaking stops to go find them. If your pet is in a crate or carrier when an earthquake strikes, leave them inside as they are safer from falling debris inside. If the carrier is light enough, you can drag it with you to safety. The Mickelson Found Animals organization suggests that if your pet is outside of a carrier when your home begins shaking, you can let them run and find a safe place to hide. As they say, cats will likely not tolerate being picked up or held during an earthquake. Regardless, if they are capable of being picked up or held and don't run to find safety, you can drop to the ground, grab a hold of them, and crawl underneath a desk or table, covering your head and neck. Once the shaking has subsided, thoroughly evaluate your pet for any injuries from falling debris. If your pet shows any signs of illness or injury, seek veterinary care as soon as possible. The organization strongly suggests getting your pet microchipped, registered, vaccinated, and even socialized to help should they get loose. Most of that is self-explanatory, but the socialization part may not be. If your animal should escape, a pet that is well socialized with people and new situations will be easier for an animal control officer or a good Samaritan to rescue than a flighty, frightened pet who rarely goes outside. A well-socialized pet will also handle stress better than an under-socialized pet. Overall, it would seem that what you should do with pets in case of an emergency, in case of an earthquake, is not all that much different from what you should do if you are without pets, but this does serve as an important reminder to get your pets chipped, registered, vaccinated, and, if possible, socialized. The The wildfires that have swept through Los Angeles have begun to subside, as news this Tuesday says one of the fires has been about 63% contained. The two fires, the Palisades and Eaton fires, rank among the most destructive in California's history. The Los Angeles community has banded together to support one another, with many people volunteering and donating. One British horse trainer living in the United States, Thea Creasy, has told of her efforts undertaking the rescue of hundreds of horses from the wildfires. Creasy moved to LA around 2 decades ago. She rescued a friend's horse near one of the areas that was blocked off due to safety concerns over the wildfires. They were originally denied access into the area, but were eventually able to find another route and were able to get to the horses and get those horses to safety as they saw smoke rise above a nearby hillside. The evacuation center they first arrived at didn't have any space for horses, and as she was searching for other options, she said her phone started blowing up. She got all kinds of texts and calls about a fire that started in the Calabasas area, which was directly next to a street she worked on as a horse trainer. She took to social media to try to coordinate a rescue with other trainers, as there were about 100 horses that needed to be rescued. She said that the horse community in California banded together and people showed up when they were needed. She also stressed that it wasn't just her rescuing the horses, that so many people played a part in making it happen. As they showed up to the area, they saw a massive black cloud of smoke and started to panic, acting really, really fast. She said that on one of the streets, she could see horse owners who looked completely panicked, worrying that their horses hadn't been saved. According to Creasy, none of the horses were injured and none had caused a fuss, allowing them to swiftly evacuate the whole lot. Regarding my animal rescue diaries, it is an important reminder, I think, to give myself that there are so many people who have dedicated their lives, all of their earnings monetarily, and even sometimes sacrifice their relationships to help animals, various types of animals. It does seem to be a little bit clustered, where you'll see the cat people rescuing the cats, the dog people rescuing the dogs, and the horse people rescuing the horses. But genuinely, the people who I've worked with who do this and work in rescue are both the nicest and meanest people you'll ever meet. Nice, obviously, because of what they do and because they genuinely have such a good, pure heart, but also mean because it depends, right? You could be on the receiving end of their meanness if you are not treating animals properly, but also they can be mean to just regular people because they've seen a lot. And a lot of it is just not easy to see. And a lot of the people who I know who have done the craziest rescues I've ever heard of, they're honestly not the friendliest people because I think they've had to build up such a strong defense system. But that's a story for another day. I just wanted to say that in cases like this, when you feel like you're the only person who sees something out on the streets, you see something, an animal in a dire situation, you feel like if you were to help, all of the burden would be on yourself. But in reality, there are so many people who work in this sector and who do dedicate themselves and all their time, all their money to doing this. So if you reach out, you will find a community of people who are ready to support you. So if you do see something, you should try to help. Hopefully you will help. If you have any animal-related stories, whether that be as a pet owner, seeing something out on the streets, I want to hear about it. I know Radio Taiwan International has a lot of international listeners. Where you're from, how is it? Do you also have a similar community? Have you also seen animals out on the streets? Let me know. You can send me a letter by snail mail if you like doing that by looking for the number 55 Bei'an Road address in Taipei, Taiwan, online, easily accessible, or writing me an email at tristan@rti.org.tw. That is TRISTAN @rti.org.tw. Making it to the end of an episode makes you a Formosa Fauna friend. It's not gross, it's cute. Thank you for tuning in, friend. All animals require enrichment. and Formosa Fauna is just that. See you next time for Formosa Fauna Fridays here on Radio Taiwan International.